What's up guys, it's 22Tech back here again with another Java tutorial, and today we're going to be talking about types and identifiers, and this is basically how we create and use variables inside Java. So to get started here, let's create a new class. Let's go ahead and call it anything here, which probably should be capitalized, and let's check this box so that Eclipse creates a main method for us. So the first kind of variable we're going to be learning about is called an int, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's an integer. I'm just going to put that as a label up there. So when we're creating a variable, there's two parts basically, and that is declaration and initialization. So for the declaration, first what you got to do is just type in the type of variable, which in this case is int, because we want to create an integer. So as you can see, as I'm typing it, it turns purple, which tells me that I did it correctly. And next comes the name of the variable, or the identifier as it's called. And let's just give it a name here, apples. We're going to be counting the number of apples. So if I just type in that right there, this is the declaration basically. So this is what basically just creates the variable. It doesn't do anything to it. In fact, if I try to print the variable, give it a second here. Yeah, so you can print the variable just like this. It actually throws me an error and says that I haven't initialized the variable because there's nothing in here yet. So to initialize it, we're going to take out that semicolon here, and we're going to set it equal to a number. So to do that, we just type in this equal sign, and then basically just put an integer on the other side. Make sure you add in that semicolon. So now we have a variable called apples that's a type of integer that is equal to 5. So now once we have this print statement and we run the program, we can see that it prints 5 right here as expected. So next we're going to go over a variable called double, which is basically a decimal. So for integers you can't include decimals. As you can see, if I add a 0.2, it'll throw me an error and say that like that basically this is not an integer, so it will not work. So for doubles we can actually include decimals too. So we're gonna declare the variable here same way. Let's call this price, and let's set it equal to, so that's the declaration, and then let's set it equal to the number here, and this, so declaration, initialization, that's how it works basically. So now we have a variable of type double, which is a decimal, so it accepts the second part of the number. That's called price, and it's equal to 2.30. And one significant thing to know is that a double can take an integer, but it'll basically add on a 0.0 to the end. So as you can see, since even though 2 is an integer, and I set it equal to this, I set price, which is a double, equal to that integer, it doesn't complain, it doesn't give me an error by highlighting in red. So if we try to print that variable now, we print the price, as you can see it highlights the references to it. It prints 2.0 because it's a double. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's change it back to 2.30. Yeah, and once I do that, obviously it's going to print 2.30. Wow, amazing. The next primitive variable is called the boolean. And a boolean is basically a variable where there's only two types, true or false. It's a two-value variable. And yeah, to create that we just do the same thing as before. So let's say is red. Is our apple red? So we declared a boolean called is red, and we set it equal to, let's say, true. So there's only two values that this could possibly be true or false. So yeah, let's make it false, I guess, because we're going to have a green apple, I guess. And then, so once you print this, as expected, it prints false, just like that. So now let's go over some simple operations that we can do to these variables. So the first one is just simple arithmetic. So now that we have these variables created, down here we can actually do some math with these variables. Okay, so for the apples, if I wanted to, let's say for example, add 2 apples to our total of 5, what I can do is set apples equal to a new number. But what I can do is actually reference itself again and say apples equals apples plus 2. So as you can see, once we've already declared this variable, we do not have to put another int at the front. In fact, if you put it, it's going to throw you an error. So now that we have that created, this is basically going to set the variable apples equal to our 5 plus our 2. So if we go ahead and down here, print apples again, it's going to say 7 because 5 plus 2 is 7. Wow. Yeah, and a shorthand to do this, so you don't have to like write the variable twice, is it's kind of an odd operation, but it's just to write apples plus equals 2, which does literally the exact same thing. As you can see, 7. And then same goes for subtraction. So if we wanted to take away 1 apple from our pile here, we can do that, which will subtract 1. Or we can do the shorthand. Whoops, oh my gosh, I cannot use a trackpad. Okay, just delete all that. So it's the minus followed by the equal signs instead of the plus sign. And then 1. And this will do the exact same thing. And as you can see, print 4 again. And for really commonly used things like 1, like subtracting 1 or adding 1, there's another shorthand you can use, which is plus plus. And plus plus literally just adds 1. So if we started out with 5 and we add 1, this is what this statement does here. We get 6. Wow. Okay. Next. Subtraction. Minus minus. That gives us 4, because 5 minus 1 is 4. And you can do the same for the double. So if I'm pretty sure you could guess what's going to happen here. We make sure it prints price. Then we will get a value of 3.3. Okay, so next let's learn about one more kind of variable, and that's going to be it for this video. And that is called a string. And a string is not a primitive variable, and primitive is, as I said before, it's the built-in variable types inside Java, the most simple kind of variables. A string is actually an object, which you don't know what that is quite yet, but we're going to get to that later. So, but just ignore that for now. So it's the exact same thing, except one thing that's important is that strings are always capitalized versus boolean, double, and int, which are all lowercase. So let's call string, and let's call it name. And so declaration, we initialize it to just whatever the name is. So let's call it Granny Smith. I think that's how you spell it. And notice how I have Granny Smith in quotes. So if I take away the quotes, it's going to throw me an error because it doesn't know what Granny Smith is, basically. It's probably looking for a variable. Yeah, it's looking for a constant or variable called Granny Smith. So we're going to put that back inside quotes, and it's marked in blue there. So a string is basically just a string of characters, which can be letters, symbols, numbers, anything of that sort. So if we go ahead and, I should probably print. So we're going to print the name. And you can see the identifiers match up. And that prints Granny Smith. So yeah, basically these are the 4 kinds of variables that I wanted to teach you guys today. And to review, we had int, which is an integer, negative integers, positive integers, 0, everything included. We have double, which is a decimal number basically, and boolean, true or false, and then a string, which is just a line of characters in order. And that's useful for storing like things like names, as I would have right here. And then we printed each one and saw that it basically just prints the value of that certain variable. And to access a variable, we have to use its identifier or name, which is this thing right here. And to create a variable, we have its initialization, which is this part, and to create a variable, we have its declaration, which is this part, and its initialization, which is this part. Oh, and I want to add one more thing, is that we can first declare a variable, and then we can initialize it, just how like we changed the values before. So 5, like that. So in this case, we have the declaration and initialization on 2 separate lines, although they're usually put on 1 line. So yeah, that's going to be it for this tutorial, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.